Hi there. Well, my wife and I have been Amway business owners for over 30 years, and we thought we'd blog occasionally about some of the experiences we've had with Amway over that time, because sometimes we hear negative things said about the company and our business, much of which is completely erroneous, some downright scurrilous. And this saddens us because Amway is so very close to our hearts. Now, the decision to do this blog and podcast was triggered when a customer came to our house to pick up some products, and I started to talk to him about the exciting developments in e-commerce and major worldwide trends of which Amway business owners are uniquely positioned to take advantage, and he replied, no thank you, I know all about the Amway business. And I was reminded of something Albert Einstein had said: anybody can know. The point is to understand. Now, Amway Global have been pioneers of the concept of compassionate capitalism for over 60 years. Therefore, through this blog, we can hopefully share some of our personal experiences, correct some misconceptions, and maybe offer some insights into the Amway business opportunity and its profundities that are not immediately apparent at first sight. There's more to an Amway business than meets the eye. It's been quite a journey, and my wife and I have enjoyed taking the road less travelled. Hi there. Well, this episode is going to be called The Amway Sales and Marketing Plan, a Miracle, a Work of Genius. But we always like to start off with a quote by Rich DeVos, Amway co-founder, and this is from his book, Compassionate Capitalism. This is our business Bible, by the way, but we'll talk about that later. But in here, he writes this: when compassion inspires free enterprise, profits follow. The quality of life is enhanced, and the earth is restored and renewed. That's pure Rich. Well, let's start with a story from our own personal experience, illustrating what Rich DeVos termed compassionate capitalism, of which a lot more later. But this is going back a long way, because we started our Amway business in Japan over 30 years ago. And at that time, everything in the world seemed to come from Japan. Just like now, everything seems to be made in China. And one morning we woke up to find some money we couldn't account for in our bank account from Amway. So we contacted Amway and asked what the money was, and what had happened was this. At the time, the yen was very high and the dollar quite low. Therefore, Amway had been making their products in dollars, but making significant profits selling them in Japan because the yen was so high. Well, obviously, a company can't keep changing its product prices according to changes in the exchange rate. Therefore, they had made what might be called windfall profits. So what Amway at their HQ in the USA said was that without the efforts of the Amway business owners in Japan, this would never have happened. Therefore, as we were in a partnership, they felt obliged to share these unexpected profits with us. So we received this completely gratuitous sum of money from Amway. We never expected or asked for it or knew it existed, and it's things like that perhaps set Amway apart and indicate their philosophy and way of thinking towards business and how it should be conducted. What Rich DeVos and Jay Van Andel, co-founders of the Amway Corporation, called compassionate capitalism. Now, Amway is a family business, no shareholders, and if there had been shareholders, that money would not have come to us, but it would have gone to pay their dividends, which would inevitably have taken priority over the distributors' interests. Now, we have many such stories we'd like to share, and we'll do so in future blogs. But one thing that convinced us about committing our and our family's financial future to developing an Amway business was the purity, fairness, and wholesome nature of the Amway sales and marketing plan. And we use those words deliberately: pure, wholesome, and fair. Soon after registering, we were at a function with Rich DeVos, Amway co-founder, who talked about Amway's sales and marketing plan's antecedents, what lay behind it, and his and Jay Van Andel's way of thinking. The desire was to create a business opportunity that was not, in fact, hierarchical or pyramidal in the conventional way, but where incomes represented results, rather than one's position in a hierarchy or one's longevity in an organization. And Rich explained that what had happened at the beginning, over 60 years ago now, was that together with his partner and co-founder, Jay Van Andel, they got down on their knees and rolled out a long roll of what they called butcher's paper on the floor. They then calculated bonus payments and how those payments would flow in an equitable fashion to represent each person's results, with each receiving in direct proportion to what they had achieved, not according to where they were in a hierarchy, down to, now wait for this, they calculated that in their heads down to 200 levels. 200 levels. In their heads, with a pen and paper, 60 years ago, long before the internet. And then they looked at each other and they said, okay, if it continues for 200 levels, it'll go forever. And that is exactly what is happening. I clearly remember Rich DeVos' words from the stage as he told us about Amway's roots and heritage. The Amway sales and marketing plan, he said, is a miracle. It's a work of genius. I heard him say that myself. I was there. My wife and I would add to that and describe it as a work of art. Well, here's Rich himself telling us how Amway pays to children's children's children, and that Amway pays forever and ever.
But for most of you, who ever thought that the company at which you worked, that if you died, your wife would automatically take over your job and continue to get the income? That doesn't happen. But it does here, doesn't it? Whatever energy you put in to build something continues to your wife or your spouse or your children and your children's children. And in Amway today, we pay bonuses to children's children's children. I don't know whether they use Amway products or not. We never said they had to. We said that, but because of what your parents did or your grandparents did when they started, we have a bonus payment system that as long as volume is generated, it passes through, and if you've got enough legs, you'll continue to get income forever and ever.
But that was over 30 years ago. So now Amway's paying to children's 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 children. And today we go on VIP invitational trips with Amway and associate with third and fourth generation ABOs who are inheriting businesses those businesses were begun decades ago by their great-grandparents who've passed away. Not many people know that, so how can they understand? Now in those days, long before computers, we individual Amway business owners at the platinum or direct distributor level had to calculate our group's bonus payments personally each month on behalf of Amway. Of course today it's all done on the computer for us, but each month, in those days, Amway would send us a lump sum into our bank, which was the bonus total for our whole organization, along with lists of everybody's activity. We would then have to calculate each person's bonus ourselves and send it to them by the Japanese equivalent of a postal order. We had to set aside one day a month for this activity, and therefore it was at that time that each ABO could learn from personal experience the principles of fairness upon which the Amway sales and marketing plan was based, whereby everybody is paid according to their results, taking out in direct proportion to what they put in, so that anybody's income could overtake that of anybody who'd gone before if they built a bigger business than anybody who'd gone before. Therefore, nobody was ever looking over their shoulder thinking, they're making money out of me. It was totally non-exploitative and a win-win situation for all concerned. And it was this intrinsic fairness of the Amway sales and marketing plan, deliberately designed from the beginning to drive a cart and horses through the conventional assumption that a business or even any social structure was inevitably hierarchical or pyramidal with someone at the top, that was the catalyst, convincing us to get serious. In Amway, there is no top. We would not be exploiting anybody, and we would not be exploited ourselves by anybody. Indeed, my wife and I are good examples of this, as there are several people in our business who earn a good bit more than we do, and we actually earn a lot more than our original sponsor. Of course, this disruptive concept of removing the shackles of conventional business is still revolutionary to some, even 60 years later. But it was the spark that unleashed the initiative and imaginations of millions of people around the world, just praying for that break that would let them show the world what they could really do and the sort of person they could really become if they got the chance. But even after 6 decades, we're still only at the beginning. Now, we would never question the integrity or good faith of any company offering a business opportunity or its practitioners, but we do feel entitled to question the long-term viability of opportunities when it would be difficult to comprehend the complexities, an infinite number of possible income permutations, when you have hundreds of thousands and then millions of distributors or business owners involved. How can anybody with the best will in the world conceive today a compensation plan, the equivalent of something deliberately devised 60 years ago to pay forever, and that has been tweaked and fine-tuned like a Ferrari over 6 decades to encompass the activities of millions of ABOs in 100 countries? This, the original form of multi-level marketing as devised by Rich DeVos and J. Van Andel, is perhaps the purest and fairest form of business model possible. But today, because Rich and Jay's concept and philosophy lying behind it was misunderstood, in some cases corrupted by unethical business people who twisted it around, sometimes creating pyramid schemes with generally rigid structures to which you had to conform, otherwise you didn't earn, Amway business owners, ABOs we call ourselves, now refer to our business more accurately as network marketing, a much better and more accurate way of describing an Amway organization. Because you see, an Amway organization is such a nebulous and fluid grouping of loosely affiliated and independent people. Some are customers, some member users, some to a greater or lesser extent business builders, representing different nationalities, religions, creeds, with different economic, educational and social backgrounds, different abilities and physical capacities, and all pursuing their own self-interest at their own pace, and all volunteers. Building an Amway business is much more profound than it first appears. After all, let's face it, anything looks good on paper. It requires leadership and people skills of a very special kind. But we'll talk about that in more detail in another blog. Anyway, today Amway is an $8.4 billion company, the world's largest direct selling company for the 11th successive year. It's paid out over 50 billion, that's billion with a B, right, in bonuses and incentives since 1959. It's a major online shopping portal and one of the preeminent social commerce opportunities available. And we'll discuss the relative merits and drawbacks of opportunities built around online shopping, such as Amazon FBA, that's fulfillment by Amazon, eBay, Etsy, affiliate marketing, drop shipping, etc. We'll do that another time. But we would plump for FBA every time. That, by the way, is fulfillment by Amway. But that again is for another day. And we're still asked occasionally if Amway is a pyramid, but that is one of the sillier allegations made against Amway, and therefore one of the easiest to discredit, and we'll talk about that in another blog. By the way, a word of warning. When checking out a company, due diligence is of paramount importance, and pumping a corporate name into Google is not due diligence. A world-famous singing star, we won't name her as it might not have been her, but what she said is correct anyway. She said, social media is the toilet of the internet. And Google, of course, is the very first odoriferous and malodorous cubicle we encounter in that toilet. So it's unfortunately quite common these days for people to do their due diligence by going to Google. They then decide the future of themselves and their families for perhaps generations to come, based upon what is written on the virtual equivalent of a toilet wall. Not a good idea. Google is not market research or due diligence. Yes, people know about Amway, but do they really understand? Once I was phoned by somebody who asked me, "Are you still in that Amway thing?" And I said, yeah, I'm still in Amway. And he said, well, look, he said, I have a new business and they pay 7 levels deep. Well, I said, thanks very much. I appreciate your thinking of me. It's very kind of you. But, you know, I've got an old business designed to pay to an infinite number of levels of depth forever. So I think I'll stick with my Amway thing. well, we could go on forever, but we'll call it a day there. But my wife and I can honestly say that over the last 30 odd years, Amway has fulfilled all its promises to us. Never let us down. We've been through some pretty tough times together, but Amway has always been there for us. So we'll talk about some of our other experiences over the decades to help people better understand Amway, at least from our point of view anyway. We'll help people understand rather than just know. As philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer observed, all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Secondly, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as self-evident. Well, we are well into stage 3, and Amway is an essential component of the economies of 100 countries and territories, and just basically taken for granted. Remember, family, freedom, hope and reward, as indelibly inscribed at the entrance to Amway's HQ, are the name of the game. It is our responsibility to continue bringing hope to people around the world, ignoring the cynics. The cynics will always be with us, and when asked, can I really do it, we can honestly say from the bottom of our hearts, yes, you can, and we will help you. So until next time, we'll leave you with Rich DeVos's legendary words, you can do it, love you, and we look forward to seeing you on the beaches of the world.